Okay, so on this question, we're factoring completely. Okay, so the first thing to do on this question, so now we're going to really, this section, we're getting to an overall strategy. So the first step, factor out common parts. What's called the GCF, whatever's in common. Factor out the common parts. So as you look at these three, we ask ourselves, first off, what number? Is there a number that they're all divisible by? And the answer would be yes. They're all divisible by 4. Check it on your calculator, right? That'll be 1, this will be 3, and this will be 18. 1, 3, and 18. When you divide them, I divided them all by 4. They're also divisible by 2, but we've got to get the greatest number that goes in, the greatest common factor. So the biggest number they're all divisible by is 4. They're all divisible by 4. And there's also letters they have in common, right? They all have what? What letter do I take out as in common? Well, you take the lowest power, x squared. They all have x squared or higher, don't they? So therefore, I'm going to take out 4x squared, and then I'm going to have 3 items in the parentheses. Tracking with me so far? So there's going to be a 4x squared in the front. And then what goes on the inside? Well, whatever works, right? 4x squared times what? We'll go back to 4x to the 4th. Remember how this works? Out front numbers multiply, powers add. So this will be x squared. So the 2 and the 2 power will add to be 4. Plus, and then what about the second one? 4x squared times what? We'll go back to 12x cubed. Out front numbers multiply, powers add. It'll be a 3. 4 times 3 is 12. X to the 1. So the 2 and the 1 power will add to be 3. Huh? Tracking with me? And then the last one, 4x squared times what? Be minus, we already know 18, right? I already divided and found the number, 18. And that's all I need. 4x squared times 18, 4 times 18 is 72. We already have x squared. I don't need to put any more x's. Here's a common mistake. Don't make this mistake. People go, I'll just put an x with nothing, and that takes care of it, because then that's just 2 and nothing, so that's x squared. No, that's not nothing. If you put an x with nothing, it really means x to the 1, right? There's 1x, and that would be 3, and that's wrong. So it's no x at all. It's just the 18, right? That makes sense? So, and we're not done. How do you know we're not done? Because this x squared says, I can go further. I can break down even further. So that was all just step number 1. Take out what's in common. What do they share? What number divides into all 3? It was 4. So I did my calculator and divided all 3 by 4, got 1, 3, and 18. Notice 1, 3, and 18. End up on the inside. And they all shared x squared. That was the lowest power, which means they all have that or more. They have that in common. So I put 4x squared in the front, and then I just put inside whatever would work. Oh. Now, how do we go further? Well, step 2. X squared, x, no x, meaning this. See how the forms, so you're going to need to start recognizing different forms and how they'll break down. When you have x squared, x, and no x. We've done this before. See, this section is putting together the whole chapter. When you have x squared, x, and no x, how does that factor? 2 parentheses. X is in the front. Remember that whole thing? We have to do that. What about the 4x squared in the front? He's still there. He just sits there. He's part of the final answer, but he won't do anything else. And then I do the 2 parentheses. Okay. And now I go, remember how this works? You do the multiply, add, multiply. Whenever you've got the format, x squared, x, no x. It's multiply, add, multiply. What multiplies to be x squared? X times x, right? Front times front to be front. And then now we're going to go last times last to be last. What times what is 18? Well, a lot of things. What multiplies to be 18? 3 times 6 is 18. But so is 2 times 9. So is 1 times 18. So how do we know which pair we want? We want 3 and 6 because they have to add to be 3 in the middle. 2 and 9 can't add to be 3. Or they might say add. Remember, add means add or subtract. Right? If you add a negative, you're effectively subtracting. Right? So when I say add, I mean add or subtract. 2 and 9 cannot add or subtract to be the middle term of 3, right? 2 and 9 add to be 11, subtract to be 7. They have no hope of making the middle 3, but the 3 and 6 can do it. The 6 take away 3 is 3. Well, how do you do the signs now? Remember Mr. Heron's rule for the signs? Your favorite saying that you say to yourself all the time? Maybe I'm thinking more of my teaching in your life than is really true. The sign in the middle goes to the bigger number. Remember that? So the sign in the middle, this guy's in the middle, right? There's 3 terms, one middle, goes which number? Always. Always to the bigger number. Let that be a stake in the ground that leads you. That'll always be true. Not sure how a stake leads anybody, but you know what I mean. Stake it down, be sure, bank on that. It'll always work. The sign in the middle goes to the bigger number. 6 is bigger than 3, right? So now, well, how do you do the others? The other one could be plus or minus. It just depends what do you mean which you? Well, you need to multiply to be negative 18. This got to be negative, huh? Negative 3 times plus 6 multiplies to be negative 18. And they do subtract correctly. 6 minus 3 does make the middle term of 3. Now we're done. This is the final answer. How do we know we're done? Well, these guys are just x to the first power. They can't go down any further. So we are done with this. So what do we do? So step 1, we took out what was in common, what number divided into all of them, and what letter power they share, 4x squared. And this is what was left on the inside. When we see x squared, x, no x, then we go 2 parentheses, multiply, add, multiply, put the x's in the front, 3 and 6 in the back to multiply to be 18, and then the sign in the middle goes in the figure. The other one's negative. And so there we go.